welcome to your deep dive into Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like you've really been digging into this one.
Yeah.
Tons of notes and highlights.
Definitely.
Clearly, this idea of focused work in our, crazy, distracted world is something you're really thinking about.
Yeah, it's something that's become more and more relevant as work changes, I think.
Absolutely.
So what we're going to try to do today is pull out those key insights from Newport and see why he argues that this deep work is so valuable, but also increasingly rare and crucial for anyone who wants to excel.
Yeah, because it feels like it's getting harder and harder to do that kind of focused work.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
You've highlighted a lot about the superstar effect and how deep work is connected to that.
Right.
And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was the example of Nate Silver, the election forecaster.
Yeah. Nate Silver practically became a household name overnight during the 2012 election.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that it wasn't just about luck or media hype. No. It was fueled by years of deep work mastering this complex world of statistics and data analysis.
Yeah, and he did something really interesting with that expertise.
Yeah.
He didn't just stay in the academic world. He applied it to this kind of new and novel area of election forecasting.
Exactly, and that's a key insight right there.
Okay.
Deep work is not just about mastering a skill. It's about applying that skill to produce something tangible and valuable.
Oh, I see.
So Silver's expertise in statistics only became valuable when he used it to create those remarkably accurate election predictions.
Right. It makes you think, what are the projects in our own lives where we can really leverage those deep work skills to create something valuable?
Yeah, absolutely.
You also highlighted David Heinemeier Hansson, the creator of Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, Hansson's another great example of how deep work can fuel success in a different way.
Okay.
So he's a superstar programmer, no doubt. But what got him to the top was actually building something tangible and useful with his coding skills.
Right. So not just the skill itself, but what you do with it.
Yeah, and Ruby on Rails, the framework that he created, is used by countless websites.
Wow.
And that's what really propelled him to the forefront of his field.
So we have Silver the data whiz and Hansson the coding guru, both succeeding in today's knowledge economy, but in different ways.
Right.
But what unites them is their commitment to deep work.
Exactly.
Which allows them to both master complex skills and produce at an elite level.
Yes. And this connects to a larger idea that Newport explores this concept of winner-take-all markets.
Okay.
He draws on the work of economist Sherwin Rosen, who explained how in certain markets, those with the highest skills reap disproportionate rewards.
So it's not just about being good, it's about being the best.
Yes.
Is that because those top-tier skills are rare and hard to replicate?
Precisely. Think about it like this. Listening to a bunch of average singers doesn't equal one amazing performance.
Right.
The same applies to knowledge work.
Okay.
There's a premium on being the best, on being able to produce at a level that others simply can't match.
All right, so it's not enough to just be good. You have to be great.
Exactly. And deep work is the key to reaching that level.
Okay, so deep work is clearly valuable in this kind of market. But how do we actually get better at it?
Right.
You've highlighted a ton about deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Which I have to admit sounds a bit intimidating.
I know it might sound intense.
Yeah.
But it's really just about being intentional with your practice.
Okay.
Deliberate practice is all about focusing intensely on a specific skill, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, and constantly seeking feedback to improve.
So it's not just about going through the motions.
Yeah.
But being really purposeful.
Think of it like an athlete trains for a specific sport.
I see.
It's not just about showing up at the gym.
Right.
It's about focused, purposeful effort.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about putting in the hours, it's about how you use those hours.
Yes, and you've also highlighted some interesting information about how deliberate practice actually impacts the brain.
Yeah, something about myelin.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So deliberate practice actually triggers physical changes in the brain.
Okay.
It leads to the development of myelin, which is a fatty substance that insulates the nerve fibers in your brain.
Okay.
And this insulation allows the signals to travel faster and more efficiently.
So the more we practice deeply, the more well-myelinated our brains become, and the better we become at whatever skill we're honing.
Exactly.
It's like building mental muscle.
Yes.
You know, one story that really struck me from your notes is about Jason Ben, who went from being constantly distracted to becoming a top programmer.
Oh, yeah.
By embracing deep work.
Ben's story is such a powerful example of the transformative power of deep work.
Hmm.
Even for someone who starts from a place of constant distraction,
Right.
he was so addicted to the internet that he literally quit his finance job and locked himself in a room with no computer
Wow.
to force himself to learn to code.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he studied programming textbooks and practiced for hours on end without any of the digital distractions that he was so used to.
No computer at all. It takes serious dedication.
It does.
Wow.
And the results were remarkable.
Yeah.
He excelled at this prestigious coding boot camp and landed this high-paying job.
That's really inspiring.
It is.
It suggests that anyone can learn to work deeply, even if they feel like they're starting from scratch.
Absolutely.
It's not about some innate ability to focus, but about making a conscious decision to cultivate that skill.
Exactly. We can all train our brains for deep work, just like we can train our bodies for physical fitness.
So we've seen how deep work can help you learn complex skills, but you've also highlighted a lot about how it leads to high-level output,
Right.
like in the case of Adam Grant.
Yeah, Adam Grant is a fascinating case study.
Hmm.
So he's published tons of articles in major journals and written these best-selling books.
Right, he's like a productivity machine.
He is, but at the same time, he's also famously accessible to his students and colleagues.
Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating about him.
Me too.
How does he do it all?
The key is his incredible attention management.
Okay.
He's a master at avoiding multitasking and minimizing something called attention residue.
Attention residue. I've never heard of that.
So it's this idea that switching between tasks,
Okay.
like constantly checking email or social media,
Right.
throughout the day actually leaves a mental residue that hampers your performance on the next task.
Oh, so it's not just about the time that you lose, but the cost of switching gears.
Exactly.
Okay.
Grant understands this, and so he avoids those attention-sapping switches by working in intense, focused bursts.
Mm-hmm.
This allows him to produce at an elite level, even though he's also very generous with his time outside of those deep work sessions.
He sounds amazing.
So he's a great example of how deep work isn't about being a hermit. It's about being intentional with your attention.
That's a great distinction.
Yeah.
It's not about cutting yourself off from the world entirely. It's about choosing when and how to engage. It sounds like this intentional approach to attention allows you to do both achieve high-quality output, but also have meaningful connections with others.
That's exactly right. And this raises a really important question.
Okay.
If deep work is so beneficial, why is it so rare?
Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating about this whole concept.
Yeah.
We see how crucial it is for mastering those complex skills and producing at an elite level. But there seems to be a lot of things working against it in our world today.
It's true.
One of the things you flagged was this contrast between the popularity of open offices
Right.
and the habits of those highly productive individuals.
Yes. So you've got these tech companies with their wide open floor plans, all about collaboration and serendipity.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the trend everywhere now.
It is.
But do those open offices actually lead to better work?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And Newport actually cites research that suggests they might actually hinder deep work and decrease productivity. The constant distractions of an open office can make it very difficult to achieve that level of focus needed for deep work.
So then why are they so popular?
That is the question.
That seems counterintuitive.
It does, and Newport points to something called the principle of least resistance to explain this.
Okay, the principle of least resistance.
So in the absence of clear productivity metrics,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to just look busy than to actually do the deep work that leads to valuable results.
Oh, so busyness becomes a proxy for productivity,
Exactly.
even if it's not actually moving the needle on the important things.
Exactly. And that busyness often takes the form of shallow work.
Right.
Constantly checking email, attending endless meetings, responding to every notification that pops up.
Oh, it's like we're addicted to the appearance of being busy, even if it's not actually helping us achieve our goals.
It's true, and this addiction is fueled by what Newport calls the cult of the internet.
Okay. The cult of the internet.
So anything internet-related is seen as inherently valuable,
Mm.
even if it's actually distracting and unproductive.
Right. Right.
And this leads to a bias towards shallow, internet-driven work, even when it's not truly beneficial.
It's a real paradox.
It is.
We've seen how crucial deep work is for mastering those complex skills producing at an elite level, yet we're surrounded by these forces that are pulling us towards shallowness.
It's a challenge for sure, but it also creates a huge opportunity for those who are willing to buck the trend
Yep.
and embrace depth in a world obsessed with shallowness. Deep work becomes a superpower.
A superpower that can lead to greater success, deeper satisfaction, and a more meaningful work life.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore further in the next part of this deep dive.
I'm really excited to dig into that.
Yeah.
But first, I want to hear what stood out to you from these initial concepts.
Yeah. What resonated the most?
And what challenges do you anticipate facing as you try to cultivate more deep work in your own life?
We'll explore all of that and more in our next session. Welcome back to your deep dive into deep work. Last time we really dug into why deep work is so valuable.
Yeah, and thinking about it as a superpower has really shifted my perspective.
Yeah, it's not just about productivity, it's about tapping into a different level of capability.
Totally. And I'm ready to unleash my inner deep work guru.
That's the spirit.
But honestly, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Oh.
Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the key things Newport emphasizes is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to deep work.
Right.
It's about finding what works best for you and your specific circumstances.
He calls this choosing your depth philosophy.
Exactly. It's like choosing your deep work style. And he outlines 4 distinct philosophies that he's seen work well for different people.
Okay.
The first one, and perhaps the most extreme, is the monastic philosophy.
Monastic. So are we talking about joining a monastery here?
Not quite, but it's a helpful analogy.
Okay.
The monastic philosophy is about eliminating all distractions and dedicating yourself completely to deep work.
So like a writer retreating to a cabin in the woods to work on their novel with 0 interruptions.
Exactly, or a computer scientist disconnecting from the internet entirely, like Donald Knuth.
Oh, right. I remember reading about him.
He famously refuses to use email.
Wow.
He believes that even email is too distracting.
So the monastic approach is all about creating that distraction-free bubble.
Yes.
I can see how that would be effective, but it doesn't feel very realistic for most people.
And you don't have to, that's why Newport offers other philosophies like the bimodal approach.
Bimodal. Okay,
Right.
That sounds a bit more manageable. What does that look like in practice?
The bimodal philosophy is about scheduling dedicated chunks of time for deep work, separating them from the rest of your life.
So it's like switching between 2 different modes of working.
Exactly. You're alternating between periods of intense monastic-style focus and periods of more normal life where you're engaging with the world and attending to your other responsibilities.
I remember reading about Carl Jung and how he used a bimodal approach.
Oh, yeah.
He would alternate between periods of intense, deep work at his retreat in Bollingen and then periods of more normal life back in Zurich.
Jung's a great example and a reminder that this approach has been used effectively for a long time, even before the age of the internet.
Right.
The bimodal philosophy offers a balance between deep work and the rest of life, which can be especially useful if you have a job that requires some degree of connectivity and collaboration.
You mentioned earlier that Adam Grant uses a bimodal approach.
He does.
As a Wharton professor, I imagine he needs to be accessible to his students and colleagues.
That's right. Grant actually schedules an entire days or weeks dedicated to deep work, where he goes completely monastic, shutting off all communication and focusing solely on his research and writing.
Wow.
But outside of those deep work binges, he's very engaged with his students and colleagues.
That's a great model. It shows that you can be both a deep work master and a fully engaged member of a community.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered monastic and bimodal. What are the other 2 depth philosophies?
The third is the rhythmic philosophy. This one's all about making deep work a regular habit. Instead of going into full isolation or scheduling large chunks of time, you simply build it into your daily routine.
So it's about creating a rhythm for your work life where deep work has a dedicated place.
Exactly. It helps you build momentum and makes it easier to slip into that state of deep focus because you're training your brain to expect it at certain times.
Like a daily writing practice.
Exactly. The consistency helps you overcome writer's block and get the words flowing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And what about the 4th philosophy?
The fourth is the journalistic philosophy, which is all about fitting deep work into your schedule wherever you can find the time.
Okay.
Just like a journalist might have to squeeze in writing time between interviews and deadlines, you're constantly on the lookout for those pockets of time where you can go deep.
So it's about being flexible and opportunistic with your deep work rather than having a rigid schedule.
Exactly.
That sounds a lot like my life.
It can be a very effective approach for people who don't have the luxury of controlling their schedules completely. The journalistic philosophy requires a certain level of adaptability, but it can also be very liberating because you're not bound by a strict routine.
So we've got 4 different depth philosophies to choose from: monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic.
Right.
It sounds like the key is to find the one that best aligns with your personality, your work style, and your circumstances.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
It's all about finding the approach that feels most sustainable for you.
Okay, so let's say I've chosen my depth philosophy.
Okay.
I'm leaning towards that journalistic approach, given my somewhat chaotic schedule.
Okay.
But how do I actually make it happen? How do I shift from just thinking about deep work to actually doing it?
That's a great question, and that's where the rubber meets the road.
Right?
Newport offers a range of practical strategies, and one of the most powerful is to create rituals around your deep work.
Yes, rituals.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
They're powerful because they help signal to your brain that it's time to focus.
Okay.
They provide structure and create a sense of intentionality around your deep work.
So it's like setting the stage for deep work, both physically and mentally.
Exactly.
I'm thinking about things like having a dedicated workspace, shutting off notifications,
Yeah.
maybe even lighting a candle, or playing certain kind of music to create the right atmosphere.
Those are all great examples. And remember, these rituals can be very personal.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Totally.
Some people might need complete silence and solitude to go deep, while others might prefer to work in a bustling coffee shop with their headphones on.
It's about finding what helps you get into the zone.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about giving yourself permission to experiment and find what works best for you rather than trying to follow some rigid set of rules.
Right.
I'm also curious about the idea of having a dedicated workspace for deep work.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really matter where you work as long as you're able to focus?
It can make a big difference.
Okay.
Having a specific place where you go to do deep work can help create a mental association between that location and focus.
So it's like training your brain to switch into deep work mode as soon as you sit down at your desk.
Exactly. It's like Pavlovian conditioning for deep work.
I love it.
Even small changes to your environment can make a difference.
Like what?
Things like decluttering your workspace, closing unnecessary tabs on your computer, or putting your phone on airplane mode can all help minimize distractions and signal to your brain that it's time to focus.
Creating a distraction-free environment makes so much sense. But what if you can't completely control your environment?
Right.
What if you need to work with other people?
Yeah.
How do you collaborate without sacrificing deep work?
That's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people struggle with, especially in today's collaborative work environments.
Right.
Newport acknowledges that collaboration can be valuable,
Yeah.
but he also emphasizes the importance of protecting your deep work time.
He talks about the hub and spoke model of collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Where you have periods of solo deep work interspersed with periods of collaboration.
That's right. So this model suggests that you should alternate between periods of solo deep work, where you're focusing intensely on individual tasks,
Right.
and periods of collaborative work, where you're interacting with others and working together on shared goals.
Okay.
The key is to have dedicated time for each mode, rather than constantly switching back and forth between individual and group tasks.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about being intentional with how you structure your time,
Exactly.
rather than letting collaboration eat into your deep work time or vice versa.
Right.
I'm also remembering something from the book about being very intentional with how you structure collaborative sessions themselves.
Yes. Newport recommends setting clear goals for those sessions, minimizing distractions during those sessions, and making sure everyone is on the same page in terms of what needs to be accomplished.
So it's not just about having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting.
No.
It's about making those collaborative moments
No.
as productive and focused as possible.
Exactly. Collaboration should be purposeful and productive, not just a way to fill up your calendar.
Okay, so we've talked about creating rituals, designing your workspace, and structuring collaboration in a way that supports deep work.
Right.
What other strategies does Newport offer? I feel like there's a lot more to uncover here.
There is. He also talks about the importance of setting clear goals and tracking your progress.
I see. I've got something highlighted here about the 4 disciplines of execution framework.
That's it?
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. This framework was developed by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Hulling.
Yep.
And it's designed to help businesses achieve their goals.
Mhm.
And Newport suggests that we can apply these same principles to our personal deep work goals.
Interesting. So it's about taking a framework that's usually used in a business context and applying it to our individual efforts to cultivate deep work.
Exactly. It's like we're treating deep work as a strategic initiative.
I thought.
The 40X framework emphasizes the importance of focusing on wildly important goals,
Right.
identifying lead measures, keeping a compelling scoreboard, and creating a cadence of accountability.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break that down.
Okay.
What does it mean to focus on wildly important goals?
It means identifying the one or two goals that are absolutely crucial to your success and putting all your energy into achieving them.
So it's about choosing your battles wisely, not
Yes.
trying to do everything at once.
Exactly.
What about lead measures?
So lead measures are the activities that directly contribute to achieving those wildly important goals.
Okay.
They're the levers you can pull to move the needle on the things that matter most.
So if my wildly important goal is to write a book, my lead measure might be to write a certain number of words each day.
Exactly.
Okay, and how about a compelling scoreboard?
Compelling scoreboard is about tracking your progress on those lead measures in a way that's visible and motivating so you can see how your efforts are translating into results.
Oh, so it's about making your progress tangible
Yes.
and creating a sense of momentum.
Exactly.
Okay, and finally, there's this idea of creating a cadence of accountability.
Right.
What does that look like?
It means regularly reviewing your progress, celebrating your wins, identifying areas where you're getting stuck, and making adjustments as needed.
So it's about having a system in place to make sure that you're staying on track.
Exactly.
The 40X framework sounds incredibly useful for making sure that you're not just working hard, but working on the right things.
Exactly. And that's crucial for deep work because it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of shallow work and lose sight of those truly important goals.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this discussion of strategies for supporting deep work, creating rituals, designing your workspace, structuring collaboration, setting clear goals, and tracking your progress.
That's a lot.
I'm feeling much more equipped to actually implement these ideas now.
Good.
But there's one more thing I remember being really intrigued by in the book,
Okay.
and that's this idea of draining the shallows.
Yes. Draining the shallows. This is one of my favorite concepts from the book.
Yeah.
It's all about minimizing the shallow work that's crowding out your deep work time.
And it starts with recognizing that shallow work is often less important than it seems in the moment, right?
Exactly.
It's like we were talking about earlier, busyness becoming a proxy for productivity.
Right. We get so caught up in responding to emails, attending meetings, and checking things off our to-do lists that we forget to ask ourselves, is this truly important?
Right.
Is this moving me closer to my goals, or is it just keeping me busy?
Newport cites that fascinating example of the software company 37 Signals,
Oh, yeah.
which implemented a 4-day work week during the summer months,
Right.
and they found that their employees were just as productive,
Just as productive.
even with one less day in the office.
It's amazing. It's because they were forced to eliminate a lot of the shallow work that was filling up their time.
Exactly. They had to prioritize ruthlessly and focus on the truly essential tasks.
It's a powerful reminder that it's not about working longer hours, it's about working smarter.
Yes.
And one of the best ways to drain the shallows is to schedule your work day and stick to it.
You're talking about fixed schedule productivity.
Yes, I'm a big advocate of this approach.
Can you tell me more about how it works?
It's all about setting a clear end time for your workday and then working backward to figure out how to get everything done within those boundaries.
Okay.
You're essentially creating a container for your work so it doesn't spill over into your evenings and weekends.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating clear boundaries between work time and personal time so you can be fully present in both areas of your life.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be incredibly freeing.
It is, and Newport offers some great tips for making fixed schedule productivity work.
Like what?
Things like using a sender filter for your email.
A sender filter. What's that?
It's a simple but effective tool for managing the influx of email.
Okay.
It involves setting clear expectations for who you will and won't respond to.
Okay.
So you're not feeling obligated to reply to every message that hits your inbox.
You're taking control of your time and attention.
Exactly.
That sounds like a game changer for anyone who feels overwhelmed by email. I'm definitely going to try that.
It's a good one.
What are some other tips for draining the shallows, especially when it comes to email?
Another great tip is to do more work when you do send or reply to emails.
Okay.
Instead of just firing off a quick response, take the time to fully address the issue at hand and minimize the need for further back and forth.
So it's about treating each email interaction as an opportunity to actually get things done.
Exactly.
Rather than just adding to the noise.
Right. And sometimes the best response is no response at all.
Really?
Newport encourages us to adopt what he calls the professorial approach to email.
Professorial.
Yeah, so this means ignoring messages that are unnecessary, unclear, or not time sensitive.
Okay.
It's about being selective with your attention and focusing on the messages that truly matter.
It sounds like it takes some courage to adopt that approach, especially if you're used to responding to everything.
It does.
But I can see how it'd be incredibly liberating.
It is, and it's a crucial part of draining the shallows and creating more space for deep work in your life.
Okay, so we're draining the shallows by scheduling our workday, using a sender filter, doing more work when we do email, and ignoring unnecessary messages.
Right.
What else can we do to minimize distractions and protect our deep work time? This is an area where I really struggle. It feels like I'm constantly battling distractions.
I hear you. It's a challenge for everyone in today's hyper-connected world. And
Right.
one of the most counterintuitive but effective strategies that Newport suggests is to embrace boredom.
Boredom, that doesn't sound very productive.
I know it might sound strange, but learning to tolerate boredom is actually crucial for deep work.
Really?
If you're constantly seeking out distractions, your brain never gets a chance to focus.
That makes sense. If we're always jumping from one stimulus to the next, we're never giving our minds the space to settle into deep work.
Exactly. By embracing boredom, you're training your mind to resist that urge to switch to something more stimulating.
You're building your mental muscles.
Exactly.
So how do we practice this boredom embracing thing? Should we just sit and stare at a blank wall?
You can if you want, but Newport suggests starting with smaller, more manageable ways to practice boredom throughout the day.
Like what?
Things like resisting the urge to check your phone while waiting in line,
Okay.
leaving your headphones at home during your commute, or simply sitting quietly for a few minutes without any external stimulation.
It sounds almost like a form of meditation.
It is very similar.
Interesting.
It's about training your attention and building your capacity for focus.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, of course, there's the importance of actually taking downtime,
Yes.
which can be just as challenging as embracing boredom.
It can be, and when you do have downtime, make sure it's truly downtime.
Okay.
Don't just fill it with more shallow activities like scrolling through social media or binge watching TV. Choose activities that are truly restorative and help you recharge.
I love the distinction. Downtime isn't just about resting. It's about actively replenishing your energy and focus so that you can be ready to go deep again the next day.
Exactly. And Newport suggests actually scheduling your leisure time, just like you
Wow.
schedule your work time. Oh, wow.
So you're being intentional about how you spend your free time.
Okay.
Things like spending time in nature, reading a book, having a meaningful conversation, or pursuing a hobby can all be incredibly restorative.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground in this discussion of practical strategies for incorporating deep work into our lives.
We have.
I'm feeling much more optimistic now. I went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling like I have a real toolkit for making deep work happen.
That's great.
But before we wrap up, I'm wondering if we can circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
This idea that deep work isn't just about productivity, it's
Yeah.
about something more profound.
Yes, you've hit on a really important point, and that's what we'll explore in the final part of this deep dive.
I can't wait to delve into that. So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll uncover the connection between deep work and a sense of fulfillment, meaning, and purpose. Welcome back to your deep dive into deep work. In the first 2 parts, we talked about the value of deep work, why it's so rare, and even some strategies to make it happen.
Right, we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
But now I'm really excited to explore this connection between deep work and meaning.
Yeah. This is where it gets really interesting.
It feels like this is where it goes beyond just, tips and tricks.
Yeah.
It gets into something deeper.
Absolutely. Newport's argument goes beyond just productivity hacks and into this realm of human fulfillment. He's not just talking about getting things done, he's talking about living a more meaningful life.
Speaking of meaning, one of the things that really stuck with me from the book was the story of Winifred Gallagher and her experience with cancer.
Oh, yeah.
You had highlighted this in my notes.
Right.
And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Her story is so powerful. What's so striking is her realization that focusing on the good aspects of her life, even during this incredibly difficult time, actually made her experience more positive.
It wasn't about denying the reality of her illness,
Right.
but it was about choosing where to direct her attention.
Exactly. And Newport connects this idea to deep work. He argues that by focusing on meaningful work, we can increase our sense of fulfillment and even find deeper meaning in our lives.
That makes sense. But it also raises a question, what makes work meaningful in the first place?
Right. It can't just be about checking things off a to-do list.
Right.
It's got to be something deeper than that. And Newport highlights the work of Methyli Csikszentmihalyi,
Okay.
who coined the term flow state. Have you ever experienced this?
Oh, absolutely.
That feeling of complete absorption in an activity
Yeah,
where time seems to melt away
totally.
and you're completely engaged in what you're doing.
I've definitely had those moments where I'm so engrossed in a project that I lose all track of time. It's like entering another dimension.
Exactly. And Csikszentmihalyi found that people experience this flow state most often when they're engaged in work that challenges them,
Okay.
work that requires their full attention and skill. That's not about doing easy work. It's about stretching ourselves and pushing our boundaries.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where the challenge of the work aligns with our skills and abilities.
Yes, and that's where deep work comes in. It's the key to unlocking those flow states, to experiencing that deep satisfaction that comes from tackling meaningful challenges and creating something truly valuable.
It makes me think about the difference between passively consuming entertainment and actively creating something new.
Right.
When we work deeply, we're not just working, we're engaging with our full selves. We're tapping into our potential and creating something that didn't exist before.
That's a great way to put it. And that process of creation is inherently meaningful. It connects us to something larger than ourselves, whether it's building a product, writing a book, solving a complex problem, or simply making something beautiful.
It's about making a contribution, leaving our mark on the world in some small way.
Uh,
I'm also remembering something from the book about deep work being connected to a sense of craftsmanship.
oh, yes.
You highlighted a section about a blacksmith named Rick Furr.
Rick Furr. Yeah, he's a master craftsman who creates these beautiful hand-forged ironworks.
Hmm.
And he talks about the deep satisfaction he gets from this process of creating something tangible with his hands, something that will last for generations.
There's a real beauty in that, a connection to something ancient and enduring.
And he contrasts this with what he calls the world of information superhighways, where work is often abstract, intangible, and disconnected from the physical world.
I can definitely relate to that. So much of the work we do today is digital. It exists only in the realm of bits and bytes. It's easy to feel disconnected from the tangible results of our efforts.
That's why Furr's story is so important. It reminds us that deep work can be a way to reconnect with the tangible, to experience the joy of creating something real and lasting, something we can hold in our hands and be proud of.
It's about bringing our skills and attention to bear on a task and seeing the concrete results of our efforts, and that tangible connection can be incredibly fulfilling.
Absolutely. It brings a sense of purpose and meaning to our work that can be hard to find in the digital world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into deep work, I'm struck by how much richer the concept is than I initially realized. It's not just about productivity. It's about craftsmanship, meaning, fulfillment, and even, as you said, human flourishing.
It's a powerful reminder that our work can be more than just a way to make a living. It can be a source of meaning, purpose, and deep satisfaction.
And as we navigate this increasingly distracted and shallow world, I think that message is more important than ever.
I completely agree.
So as you continue to explore the ideas in deep work, I encourage you to keep that connection to meaning in mind. Think about what aspects of your work bring you the most satisfaction. What challenges you in a way that allows you to tap into your full potential? How can you carve out more space for deep work in your life, not just to be more productive, but to experience that deeper fulfillment that comes from doing work that truly matters? We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and inspiration to embark on your own journey toward a deeper and more meaningful work life.